welcome back to the special live broadcast brought to you by CNBC Africa in conjunction with the Progressive Business Forum. My guest this morning is Deputy Finance Minister Nhlanhla Nene, and he's been taking us through some of the key tenets of the ANC's policy around creating an environment in which the economy can grow and talking to the partnerships between all the social partners. I am now going to be taking questions from the floor, from the various guests. We are joined by representatives from a cross-section of companies in the South African economy, as well as journalists and members of the international community. I'll be taking questions in bunches of 3. Let's start with the gentleman there in the blue shirt. If you can just introduce yourself, sir.
Thanks. Good morning. My name is Alan Fine from Anglo.
Can we just get the mic to the gentleman? Thank you so much.
Good morning. My name is Alan Fine from Anglo Gold Ashanti. Mr. Deputy Minister, could you perhaps give us your perspectives on what the thinking is in the National Treasury on new forms of mining taxes that obviously are being discussed in the hall across the lawn?
Okay, the gentleman over there.
Thank you, Program Director, and thank you, Deputy Minister, for the way in which you clearly and without hesitation stated the problems that South Africa has. I have great appreciation for that. However, I'm Johannes Moller from Agri South Africa, representing the commercial farmers. There's a Maputo declaration that has been taken by the Southern by the SADC countries, that states that 10% of national budget in the SADC region should be spent on agriculture. Now, we don't want that in South Africa because we won't even be able to waste that amount of money. However, primary agriculture constitutes about 3%, just under 3% of our GDP, but the agricultural budget is just about 0.75%. Now, I know there are other channels through which agriculture also receive money, like through water affairs, education, and so on. But even in the broadest terms, agriculture receives only about 1.25% of the budget. And the areas that are critically underfunded is agricultural research and agricultural extension services. And there's no indication in the midterm budgetary outlook that this is going to change anytime soon. And this leads to our commercial farmers not keeping up their competitiveness internationally, and our newly established emerging small-scale farmers just can't get the support services that they need to make a success. So it's impacting very negatively on agriculture. It leads to decreases in our exports, and eventually it might lead to problems with food security. And I would like you to have your views on this, please. Thank you.
The last question, we'll give Mr. Kosev an opportunity, the CEO of Investec Group.
Mr. Minister, I think very clearly there's not that much that we disagree on, and most of what you said we probably agree on. I think that there are a number of big challenges, and I'd just like your perspective on where we are with labour and labour flexibility, because I think that is a big obstacle to job creation. And then I think the other big obstacle to growth and development is really our education system, and it's no good that we rank 144 out of 144 countries on maths and science, or even in basic education we rank 140 out of 144. So it's really, where's government's thinking on those two fronts, because I think they are big obstacles to the implementation of the National Development Plan if we don't get them right.
Deputy Minister.
Thank you very much. On mining taxes, I think we must have a session there, Alan. But you know exactly, again, going back to our track record, you know how we process tax policy. We've never taken tax policy decisions on the hoof. Every time we go through a process of consultation, we go through a parliamentary process, and we listen to all the sides. It normally takes, and that is why at times we're accused of not being able to implement some of our tax policy decisions in time, because we allow too much space for consultation. That is what we will do. If anything comes out of an ANC conference that requires of us to do that, we will go through a consultation process. And please, I want to assure you that we will not be reckless. This is one area that we've handled with care all along in our history of 18 years. With regards to some of the SADC decisions with regards to a percentage of the budget to agriculture, honestly, anything, you know, one of the things we said in the budget this year is a line that nobody actually goes back to, that the minister said. I think it's because it's the shortest sentence in the budget, that says no good project will go unfunded. It's a very short line. Just look for it. I don't know what the page is, but there is that line. Because irrespective of what it is that we have actually budgeted for and that we have, I think we have said in our country the problem is not lack of funds. It's whether we do have projects, because, and that's one of the things we're accused of at the Treasury, that I don't know how they always put it, that the stingiest a bunch of people in the whole government, only because all we call for is, where's your business case? Put your business case here, and I'm sure the nation will forgive us for even going out of what had originally been approved. But we have processes again. It's not as inflexible as that. We are able to go back to Parliament. We are able to even make special appropriations in order to make sure. But I think we have met with a number of business sectors. I think we should have an engagement with agriculture with regards. It's not about percentages. It's about progressively moving in a direction that begins to give agriculture. And I agree with you that agriculture actually has a potential of actually increasing its contribution to our GDP quite immensely. And it also addresses a number of things. I'm also an emerging farmer myself. It also has a potential of addressing our triple challenges on a massive scale. It deals with the issue of unemployment, it deals with the issue of economic development and poverty alleviation in a scale that actually even absorbs the surplus labor that we have, because the surplus labor we have in our country is mainly unskilled labor. But also it would help the emerging farmers as well as commercial farmers. We speak about the extension services. That's the area which I also identify as lacking tremendously in agriculture. But when we deploy resources where we have a plan. We deploy resources where we know that those funds are going to be spent. We deploy resources where that those funds are also going to have an impact on delivering on the needs of our people. But I think we should have the manufacturing tech sector. We've had a number of meetings. The financial sector we do meet with, and I think it's important to identify what type of incentives would actually put agriculture in a competitive environment. We also know we're competing with people who actually, have the incentives that we do not have. But I'm not too sure whether we also should just impose those incentives on agriculture. It should be agriculture that says this is what would benefit the economy. And we know that agriculture is also not going to be selfish to say this is what is going to benefit themselves. It should benefit the country. If it is in the interest of the country, that is what we are there for. Labor flexibility and education system is because of, again, very critical areas in building an economy that is able to respond to the challenges that we face. As you would know, both the areas that you are raising are unfortunately rooted in our attempt to address this historical issues that we have. In labor, we got in, and it was, all in all honesty, the whole mission of government and society was to be able to get out of an exploitative labor system that actually resulted in the inequalities and the income inequalities and poverty wages that we experienced and poor working conditions. Addressing that, we need to find the right balance. Whilst we want to move in that direction, but I think we need to realize the phase at which we are now and begin to see how best we can have that. And that is why there is an ongoing debate between government, Labour and government, both at NEDLEC and outside of NEDLEC, trying to find the right balance between what would continue to be fair to Labour, but at the same time be able to create an environment where business is able to create employment. I think we also need to continue engaging in that, and I think part of what we were able to do during the discussions on the new growth path actually took us a step further, as I said earlier, in trying to look at that. But we are going to need a solution that is cooked by all of us. It's not government that is going to come with a silver bullet. It's not business that will solve it with a silver bullet. And that is why even on some of the policy uncertainties that are always referred to is the youth wage subsidy, where there is this impasse. Because as government, we would be irresponsible to move on and implement if we haven't found each other on it. And if people feel strongly about it, so should the engagement be. But we should all be honest about trying to find a solution that is going to benefit the outsiders, because that's another problem. I always say we sit around tables, and in every meeting I've sat in, I've looked around the table and I said, look, there's something missing here. All the people sitting around the table don't represent the constituency whose problems we're trying to solve. If you sit in a NEDLEC environment, you're sitting with organized labor, organized business, and government. So in organized labor's interest are the employed in South Africa. Organized business is organized business's interest. But we are trying to solve the problem of unemployment. We're trying to solve the problem of the emerging entrepreneurs. And unfortunately, as government, those are the ones we should represent. Those are the ones we should represent. So as we respond to those of the table with us, on the table with us, we should also take into account the plight and the aspirations of the people outside of the formal engagements that we have. So the two, labor flexibility, education system, I must submit, it's what government assists with. In terms of the allocation of resources in education, you all agree that this is what we have done. But in terms of improving the education system itself, a few steps have been taken, and I must say it's because of the deep-rooted problems in education. I don't think we are going to solve it overnight, but I think this partnership needs to start to address that, because business also, and to some extent, and I know that business is doing something in trying to build the skills that they require. If we were all to be able to do that in the financial services sector, try and build those skills where you are in the accounting, in the manufacturing, and that is why these learnership programs should actually be utilized, because that's how far government can go in actually trying to create an environment where government, labor, business, and civil society will be able to benefit and be able to take advantage of what is on the table.
Well, we're going to be taking some more questions. Please, can we have another show of hands? Whilst the mics get to the individuals, I'm going to identify the lady with the orange tag. Donwald, your hand has been up, the gentleman with the glasses, and then the lady here in the maroon dress. Whilst the mics get to the various people, I'm just going to be talking to you, Minister, about what Minister Rob Davies said yesterday. He was our guest yesterday, and a question was asked about labour flexibility, and he was a lot more certain than you were. He was saying, we are not reversing labour laws. We don't want to go to a situation where we have switched shop wages. We've seen the aftermath of Marikana. That is not the way to go. It is not a sustainable way to grow the economy. Do you share Minister Davies's take on an approach to dealing with labour flexibility?
Absolutely. I might just be more polite in saying that we need to find the right balance between addressing the disparities of the past, but also moving in a manner that recognizes the phase at which we are, so that we all are able to take some pain in order to be able to move forward, because unfortunately that's what should happen.
Okay, let's take the lady from the floor there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Minister, and of course to PBF for organizing this session for us. My name is Zodwa Veleman. I'm the Legal Director and Security Director for Brand House. Brand House is a joint venture between Diageo, Heineken International, and NBL. So for those that don't know it, if we talk about Johnny Walker, Heineken, and Venduk Draft, that's some of the brands in our stable. And if I may proceed, my question really, Mr. Deputy Minister, is on the issue of excise. You talk about the companies, the private sector coming to the table with government. You know, we want to build the trust. We want to share with you what it is that we need, where we're actually going. We want to talk about issues of transparency. But over and over, I mean, when it comes to issues of excise, we tend to feel that government holds their cards close to their chest. You know, they leave us to speculate no end, and we tend to feel that it's left to the last minute, where if the government is unable to raise the necessary monies, they will look into your sin industries. You know, your British American tobaccos, they are in the stable. Brand House are in it. And until the last minute, you know, you actually do not know what it is that government is thinking. So my question to you, and I'm hoping you'll make me understand why it is that it's so difficult that you can assist us to be able to plan better, particularly if you know where we're coming from, why it is important for us to actually get some sense as to where government is headed and where the excise is actually going to be coming out at. That's it from me. Thank you.
Donwell?
Yes, Donwell Presley from Business Report, independent newspapers. I know that politics is the game of contest, and Trevor Manuel, who's in charge of national planning, has said that he's not standing for the National Executive Committee. Does this set the National Development Plan back in any way? And we've also seen a whole range of top business people, including Cyril Ramaphosa and Matthew Sposa and others, standing for high office in the ANC. Does this show a renewed commitment to a business-friendly environment from the African National Congress?
We'll take the next question. As the mic moves around, perhaps the Minister can just hold us. Yes, there we've got our third question.
Good morning. My name is Rogie Kiston from Old Mutual. Minister, you spoke about the people you're trying to serve. In our experience in the field of economic and social infrastructure spend, the biggest bottlenecks is not the money. The bottlenecks is sitting at local government. How does government expect to unblock that so we can actually get those houses delivered at the cost at which we start out and not the end cost, which is often double because of the lack of capacity?
All right, before the Minister responds, can we just go to the next three people that will be taking questions, if the mics can be delivered? Minister Nene, you can start answering questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Karima. And the first was from Zodo, excise duties. Yeah, again, some of these things will have to be taken offline, Zodo, but yeah, I'm not aware that your industry is left to the last. You know, our budgeting process and tax policy is not something. It's not an event. It goes. You know, for 12 months, we are in discussion with various parties. And we also are not averse to people coming forward. Even before those discussions, if there is a paper, you know, that has been produced, that's just a formal process. But engagements should actually go beyond that. If there are issues that any sector feels that they need to bring to government, we're open to such discussions. I do not want to go into the various types of taxes and how each one is dealt with, because lest I, you know...
Cause big headlines tomorrow.
Exactly. But, yeah, and Donald there is... actually waiting patiently for something that might actually make the headlines. But you know, we have different approaches to excess duties, and as you would know, a number of things are taken into effect, including the price elasticities and also, you know, behavioral also issues. As you would know, if Minister of Health was here, he would actually, you know, be much tougher than I'm actually coming across. But yeah, you know, it's a very difficult balance again. You know, that's the balancing act that government has to play all the time. Protect this, but make sure also that you also protect that, whilst the two are actually diametrically, you know, opposed to each other. So I think we should look at, you know, the timing, and if there are issues that the industry wants to bring to the fore, we're not averse to listening. The question, I mean, Donald's question with regards to, you see now, the unavailability of a person who has served longer than 20 years in a structure, and who also has indicated what other contribution he wants to make. I think as politicians, you should also be allowed the freedom of either being in, because you actually do not only serve in a particular position to be able to do, you know, what you want to do, and your contribution lies all over. At times, you are constrained by your particular position to be able to exercise. It doesn't pose any threat to the National Development Plan. The National Development Plan is the country's plan, and it has been received and adopted by government, by parliament, and Trevor only chaired the National which he continues to chair the National Planning Commission on behalf of government, and the two actually are not related. His non-standing in the NEC has nothing to do with his position in government. Also, the entry of some businessmen. I think we should see more of you doing that. We should see more of business coming. Maybe that will help also in building the trust, because if we see more business people in other countries, it's the norm, where you actually see people moving either direction, either from business into government, or from government into business. But you know, when you've taken a decision to be in business, and you know, in order to avoid some of the problems we have in the country, when you've taken a decision to be in business, be in business. If you've taken a decision also to be in government, be in government. I mean, I hope I'm clear. But then local government, we agree. Local government is an area that needs to be strengthened. If you see what we have done in the Presidential Infrastructure Coordinating Commission, we've brought local government on board. But what we have done, we have said we are going to share the capacity to implement with local government also. We're not going to rely on the capacity or non-availability of capacity at local government, because the monitoring is central, but we are going to make sure that we go all out to make sure that we build the capacity, and we call on business and everybody else to work with us in making sure that that capacity is there. Project management is a serious matter. Planning for some of these projects, they don't take off, we don't spend. When we do spend, we spend outside of our budgets. When we, you know, the most important thing for us to achieve our intended objective of establishing the Presidential Infrastructure Coordinating Commission is to make sure that we break those barriers and the bottlenecks, and we're working hard at it. If anybody has any suggestions, come to us. I unfortunately, for the sins I've committed in the past, I'm part of that Presidential Infrastructure Coordinating Commission. But believe you me, little time is spent in meetings. Not that we don't meet till midnight, but most of the time is spent out there making sure that whatever it is that we've committed to gets implemented. So implementation is just the name of the game this time around.
We have 3 minutes left. I'm going to give 2 people the opportunity to pose questions. Please be brief so that the Minister can respond. Carol and the gentleman next to you. Thank you.
Hello, it's Carol Payton from Business Day. Mr. Nene, have you given much thought to creating an infrastructure fund in government which would be a more an alternative way of raising money for infrastructure, and linked to that, the issue of using savings and pension funds money to fund infrastructure? Thanks very much.
Hi, Maurice Radebe from African and Mineral Energy Forum. My question is about really, we have a very high carbon economy and we want to transition to a low carbon economy. How can we do that in your mind, Minister, without losing jobs, much needed jobs? And secondly, is what's your comment around the confusion relating to carbon tax and carbon budgets? Thanks.
Minister.
I knew that was going to come. And I was just praying that that one is outside of the list of questions. Carol, infrastructure fund and savings, you know, we are currently developing legislation to actually assist us in dealing with this, because everything, if you establish a fund and if you are to venture into any new ground, unless you have the proper checks and balances, you run the risk of actually going outside first of the discipline of the budgeting process, but also of the normal legislative framework without being restrictive. We need to go into that. So there is an infrastructure development a bill that is currently, that it's gone through cabinet, it'll be going into parliament. Part of what it does is recommends that. But as I said, you know, that short line in the minister's speech clears the decks because there is no infrastructure project. In fact, it's not about, again, it's not about percentages here. So some people saying at least 10% of your budget should go into infrastructure. We've had up to 9% at some point, but come end of the financial year, if we haven't spent that 9%, it's just a number in the budget review unless we have been able to spend. So the infrastructure fund, you know, actually exists, but it's just all over. We do not want a situation where no one is accountable, because at the end of the day, somebody needs to be accountable for the resources that we disperse. It is recommended in the bill, but whether we will have a separate fund or whether we will identify funds that would actually be referred to is still subject to discussion as we move on. Use of savings and pension funds. You'll be surprised how much of the pension fund savings is invested in infrastructure. I also, for the sins that I've committed in the past, happen to chair the Public Investment Corporation. We heavily invested in infrastructure and so are a number of pension funds, because without, besides the fact that there are real returns in infrastructure, but also it's a contribution towards development in the country. Carbon taxes, I told you there is a process, Pungan. We must participate in the process, and it's offline.